Welcome to Transatlantic Wrestling Talk. I am your host, Andy, joined always by my brother Dale. How we doing, bud?
Hey, Andy. Thank you once again for that lovely introduction. So by the time you guys are seeing this, it's going to be March 2022. So we figured let's go all the way back to a quarter of a century, 1997. All right. But we've been doing so many WWE programs due to the lapse and actual pay-per-views during that time of year. We said, you know what? WCW needs a chance. And we looked at the calendar and said, did something big happen in 1997 in March? What happened, my friend? Look right behind Andy and it'll show you probably the biggest main event in WCW, the 90s, I should say, for WCW. Yeah. Is that correct?
I'd probably say one of the biggest ones of all time for them, to be honest. I think the whole Starcade 97 for guys who are listening on podcast version. But yeah, I'd say it was one of the biggest ones they ever done because we'd never seen Hogan versus Sting at this point in time. The whole Sting character and the way that they built him up, he was this Hollywood surfer, and in the next minute, because the NWO come in and was ruining things, and he kind of went into the whole Crow character because he was so sad and everything else. It was just good, great storytelling at the time, wasn't it?
It was long-term storytelling for a year and a half because Sting did not speak a word.
No.
Sting didn't say a thing for a year and a half. And Hogan, and I have friends that say, this is the best version of Hogan. You know why? Because everything he said, he was telling the truth. And let's be honest, when he listed his accolades, he was saying the truth every single time out there. I made this industry. I made it what it is today. All of you guys, I mean, this guy, if he knew how to politic, but the man also knew how to sell. And we're going to get into that, man. We are just going to enjoy it. But first, we're starting off. Let me ask you, when you tuned in, now you and I, once again, we just name a pay-per-view and we watch it. When I saw Dean Malenko come out, and then when I saw Eddie Guerrero, I said, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
And I was not disappointed.
No, it was a great match, wasn't it? I mean, the only thing that disappointed me at the start was the fucking Jag music they've put over it on the network.
Yeah, there's definitely, so there's that weird point where like the 90s had that huge contrast as far as like production feel. I mean, I think WWF, if you saw like Survivor Series from a few years ago, you would have that dun, 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 all that stuff going on, and you'd have like, Diesel be like, oh, what a pittance, with his title. Shout out to OVW there. Or old school wrestling, but and Bret Hart saying, you want this title, you got to come and get it. But they actually had this really weird, like, eerie music to build into the Starcade. And then all of a sudden there's Malenko, who, by the way, do you remember how awesome his music was?
Yeah. I seen that. I was like laughing my head off because I was thinking, like, obviously Guerrero's is being patched over, hasn't it? With the WWE version, shall we say. But Dean's was left untouched, and I really liked it. Do you know what I
mean? Seeing heel WCW Guerrero come out, it was probably one of my favorites. I think, a few months from now, you're going to have probably the greatest cruiserweight match in the world. And that involves Rey Mysterio, who was in attendance. We will get to that in a little bit. But this version of Guerrero was he's more polished. I think he knows that he's the shit at this point. And Malenko knows that he's just fantastic too. Yeah. He's going to go into a feud with Jericho, which is legendary, by the way. So this is
54 arm bar.
Three-handled credenza. So overall, though, this match was just fantastic. This is going to show Guerrero going over, just perfect execution as far as moves go. And actually the finish, I mean, Eddie worked on the knee, and Malenko's knee was not good. Eddie wins it by doing a frog splash on the knee.
Yeah.
Come on. Like he's just like, you know what? I'm going to exploit this. And it's not much that you see. You could do that exploitation of a body part, But a lot of times they weren't doing the finisher on that body part that you're working, That's why I liked it.
Yeah. I mean, that's it, isn't it? And these two are proper old school trained wrestlers in the best possible way. And, the way they're telling, sometimes, guys, you don't need to tell a story just based on, they've got a feud based on this. You can tell an in-ring story. And I think this is a match that, if you haven't seen it, you should go and watch it, because, as Dale says there, the attacking of the knee and then the way the finish was and everything else in between, it's telling a story of how Eddie Guerrero broke him down by using a body part and working it, and finally getting the victory in the end of it. So it just shows you that if you go back and watch stuff like this, is when they turn around and say you can't tell a story. Yes, you can. And Bryan Danielson probably does it really well nowadays. He's probably one of the ones I'd say is a standout for doing stuff like this. But we don't see enough of this in wrestling nowadays, in my opinion.
No, actually, and that's why if you recall in the movie The Wrestler, you'd say, "Look, I'm going to work this. Just sell it, sell it, sell it." And you had people coordinating in the back that said, and they say, "I'm the one working the neck." "Oh, you're doing the neck? All right, so I'll do this." "Oh, wait, you're not doing the neck, because we'll work the neck." Do you think that that's actually taking place now? I mean, we spoke with Troop last week, and he said that that's the main thing. The main focus is just, work something and tell a story instead of hit your spot, hit your spot, hit your spot, hit your spot. And this is the complete opposite. You're feeling the crowd now. And that's why this match is probably one of my favorites on the night, man.
It really was, mate. And one thing that I do want to say as well, and do you know what? It pains me to say this, because I love him so much and he's such an influence on me and my love of wrestling. Dusty Rhodes was awful on commentary throughout this whole program. I didn't feel like he added anything to it at all. I tell you two things. One, I don't know whether it's because of Dusty or because of the way that, I mean, you look at like WWE, the way they always had like Vince McMahon and Ventura, Gorilla and Heenan, JR and Jerry, where you had one play-by-play guy and the colour commentary from somebody like Jerry Lawler, if you want to say thingy, where Tenay and Shivani together here, for me, I don't know whether these two overwhelmed Dusty to the point where he become a bit irrelevant in the whole thing because of it.
That's a great point, Andy. That's a great point. On Nitro, I felt like I think it was because Zbyszko was having a match later on, and looking back now and listening to old WCW, Zbyszko was fantastic. He really was who he was, a living legend. And Mike Tenay, at the start of the show, you'll have Dusty there, Shivani, and Tenay. Tenay does this smirk that says, "I'm going to outshine everybody," because he does. Mike Tenay is a legend. Mike Tenay is fantastic. There's a reason why they call him a professor, and there's a reason why Excalibur tries to be him. And the only difference is that Tenay has experience with things. I don't think Excalibur does. He just
and as I say, it's not a shot at anybody on this commentary, but for me, Shivani and Tenay are so similar that there's no need to have the two of them on there. And I believe by having them two on there, it kind of diluted Dusty a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
because we know we can talk. We know we can talk, but
the thing that I appreciated about Dusty in this was actually going more on the psychology side, because there were some points during, I believe, the Raven match. No, I'm sorry, the Page and Hennig match, where he actually said there's a reason why Hennig does this, because I think he actually enjoyed Hennig's work. We'll get to that match, and talk more about it. But you're right, Dusty. There's a reason why Botchamania made their own section as far as Dusty being an announcer.
All right, well, we'll move on. So,
great match, though.
Yeah, it was a really good match. And you know what? This was only one of there was 8 matches on the card altogether, and only 3 matches got a clean finish with no interruption.
WCW. Yeah, this is
which was kind of like, as you say, it's WCW, and people go on about Vince Russo and say, like, at that time he was the one that was always botch or a swerve and stuff like that, where basically the whole WCW product was built on the swerves and the input, and a lot of the time it wasn't needed. A lot of the time it was not needed. You didn't need to do that. But anyway, going to another thing that was really so 1997, after the match between Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko, Scott Hall comes out and cuts a promo on a pay-per-view. It was
And
so 1997 that.
it was weird too, because he comes
Yeah,
out and I'm like, why is he not wrestling?
yeah.
He's a champion, quote
Mhm.
unquote. And this is what they advertise as their WrestleMania. And
Yeah.
you and I have actually discussed, like, this is billed as their WrestleMania, but we've talked about how the quality, like, if you want to compare quality with their big four, quote unquote,
Mm.
Halloween Havoc is definitely probably the best matches that they've had.
Oh,
You know,
100%. And Bischoff even admitted on his own podcast, 83 Weeks, that they did actually see Halloween Havoc as the main attraction for them, wasn't it?
things fell in line for them at
Mm.
Halloween Havoc, even though if they wanted to push this as Starcade, their biggest thing. I just, like, why are you having Scott Hall, one of the big name acquisitions that you got last year? Why is he just coming out with his shirt tucked?
Yeah. And then obviously he comes out with the Giants, comes out, or as we know, Big Show, Paul White. He come out in the end, he choke slams Hall. We have a little thing, and then he goes off again. So, maybe they just thought, you know what, we had no matches for them. One thing that I'll probably say in defense of WCW here is, as you've just said there, is like, why not have him a match? Well, maybe there wasn't a match for him here, and they hadn't built anything for him to be involved in. So I'd rather see him in this kind of case than throw him in a match just for the sake of it, just to get him on the card. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Where sometimes they'll make WWE do it all the time, where they'll have something like where they throw somebody into a triple threat or somebody as a knock-on card match just to put them on the card, and it's kind of like, really.
Yeah, well, not to get too into it, but there was something very weird going on in this pay-per-view too, because they look at it as the time where WCW grabs the reins back from NWO,
Yeah.
and all scattered throughout the crowd were actual people in WCW that worked for WCW. So you had Harlem Heat sitting next to Rey Mysterio, which I was
Yeah,
like, oh, that's cute. Somebody brought their little kid here. And then Ravens flock always sat outside.
Yeah.
And then, like, in the back, it was just really distracting because you're trying to watch a match and there's Viano 5 and Super Kalo sitting next to each other, 3 rows behind the hard cap. And like, I'm like, none of these guys could face Scott Hall today. Like, I don't even care if it's a squash match. Like, have them work.
I don't know. As I said, I like the way they done this. I thought that it was good. So, it was good the fact that they done it this way rather than just putting them in a match for the sake of it. Do you know what I mean? And also, I don't think it was too long after that the Giants and Scott Hall actually got involved in a match. So I think it was good to kind of build a little bit of a story going forward as well and keep it in line with stuff. You could have just threw him in a squash match, but I like the fact that he didn't on this one. So next one we had Scott, Norton, Vincent, and Randy Savage versus Ray Traylor, formerly known as the Big Boss Man, and the Steiner brothers with Ted DiBiase. Do you know one thing that I said straight away with this? How much does Scott Norton look like an 80s wrestler in this match?
Yeah.
Compared to, and you know what was crazy is you look at the rest of them, they didn't.
No, he's just totally, I mean, you could just tell the bodybuilding was his meat and potatoes. That's what he did. But I love Scott. He was vicious, and you also had delicious somewhere else on the card.
Yeah.
And just the fact that, let's point out that coming out first was Vincent, shirt tucked again, very clean, and Scott Norton coming out, and you'd have DiBiase managing the Steiner brothers, which was, I thought was just a weird thing. And Ray Traylor came out. You didn't know who the partner was for the NWO. Yeah. You heard the music and you heard the ooh yeah, and the crowd popped.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, this match was weird. It was clunky. The rules were just not applied here.
I'd say one thing I will say though, Vincent or Virgil is known more widely, especially nowadays. He was all right in this match, when he took his little bits and bobs, but he took it well and he moved okay. And
hold on. Towards the end of the match, he's on Rick's shoulders. Scott goes on the top rope and does a DDT to Vincent. And I go, fuck.
Yeah.
you don't see that.
Yeah. And
Like,
also when he took the Hurricane Rana from Scott as well. And Scott's a big boy at this time. And, you know,
impressive.
we all know it's a work, come on, guys. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like when you see Scott doing that to him and you see the way Vincent takes it, it's like, good on you, because it must be hard to have that lad on his shoulders. But then when you've got that weight on your shoulders and then you've got to flip yourself after it, you know, fair dues to him. He's done well, yeah.
Yeah, he was definitely a workhorse.
Yeah,
Ending
yeah.
of the match, though, just
Ugh.
a cluster. But I will say this: the amount of people that, when Savage approached the top rope, the amount of people that actually stood to their feet and waiting, you know. And I said, just pinpoint, just amazing. Of course, this is the one match that my wife walked in and watched, and she's like, "Oh," and I'm like, "That's a legend right there."
But do you know what?
He is.
Do you know what I've put on my notes here? That at this point in the 6-man tag, it looks like NWO's already becoming like COVID, where everybody's got to catch it in the locker room, because it's like, even at this point with this 6-man tag, I was just like, and I just put underneath it, wouldn't it be awesome if they just kept Hall, Scott, and Hall, Nash, and Hogan in the faction, and maybe added a couple of others in there instead of having to drag everybody into it.
Oh yeah, all the friends, you know, like VK Wall Street's my favorite. Who's IRS, right?
Yeah.
But it was funny because during the pay-per-view, like we had the random people sitting there. So Father James Mitchell, who's managing Mortis at the time, and Wrath, Brian Clark. In between them is Alex Wright, and Mike Tenay is going on and on about, oh, I wonder what's going on there. Are they working on something? I can't believe Alex Wright is aligning himself with James Mitchell. It's like they randomly sat. They just got tickets. Like, so those are all the anti-vaxxers that are actually hanging out together.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll move on from that match. Obviously, Macho Man at the elbow got the win. NWO
best looking elbow drop ever. Best looking elbow drop in the world.
Unbelievable.
Have we done a lot of Savage matches?
Hey, we haven't covered a lot now. I think we will do over this time, over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, March is a big time for WrestleManias and stuff, so I think we will get into.
One thing I must say, even as a heel, quote unquote, for NWO, he came to the ring and was pointing at people like, "That's right, man, yeah." And he just loved the people.
I don't think he done. I mean, I know last month we didn't done a lot of Royal Rumbles, but I don't think he was in it. He was in the Royal Rumble matches, but I don't think he had many matches at the Royal Rumble, if that makes sense.
I don't think we spoke ever really about Macho Man, and that's something we could dedicate 5 weeks
we can do a whole episode on Macho Man. I think maybe, when it comes around to his anniversary or something like that, we can do something like that.
Yeah. So I hate to break up the Love Brigade, but I have notes for the next match.
Well,
I have notes, folks. Just to go into it, we have Goldberg versus Mongo. That's the only introduction you need. Goldberg isn't the Goldberg that we know yet at this point. Goldberg's on a run. At some point, though, Mongo knows that Goldberg is an ex-NFL player, and he says, "You know what? I'm the only ex-NFL player here. So forget about Reggie White in the past. Forget about Kevin Green in the past. Okay, Kevin Green, by the way, was made for wrestling. He just passed a couple of years ago. But Kevin Green had it. He had it. Yeah. So I'm going to go into my notes. Okay.
LT as well was another one.
Yeah. Actually, do you know the whole story with Mongo, though? Mongo with LT, he was part of like LT's like brigade. You know, he had Chris Spielman, a bunch of other linebackers, Carl Banks, too, a Giants linebacker that teamed with LT. WWE was interested in bringing in Mongo because they loved who he was. If you look at the promos and look at actual like footage of him hyping up LT, you go, this guy's made for the mic. Yeah. And WCW took him. That's one inkling. We could go on and on about Mongo, but he's a beloved character. I hope that he's okay. You know, it's unfortunately with the ALS and stuff. But I'll say this, and I'll go into my notes right now real quick. So Mongo versus Bill Goldberg notes. Never thought I'd be talking about this in 2022. Shivani says these two had to be kept away by using separate hallways. Goldberg waited 4 seconds for Mongo to get to the top rope for a blocked axe handle. After a one-legged takedown into a submission, the ref began to count to 3, which alarmed Mongo to get up since he didn't know why the ref was counting. The bottom of the table was labeled DMS, which stood for Don't Manage Sid. When facing other football stars, Mongo turns into Harley Race. This company wasted so much money with the WCW wrestlers being in the front row. Dusty is genuinely befuddled. Mongo had a good-looking tombstone. He did. I don't care what people say.
Yeah, he does.
This is the first instance of a rug burn on Goldberg's forehead. And during the jackhammer pin, Goldberg brushed Mongo's junk, and I'm pretty sure there was no dinner on that date.
Okay, well, I have notes on this match, John.
Oh, okay.
They're a bit briefer than yours.
Mm-hmm.
Just get... I have my book here. This was the longest match I've seen Goldberg compete in.
You were not right. You're not joking.
What is the best? Look, here's a bit of trivia for you. What's the longest ever Goldberg match?
Oh, before the Lashley one?
No, it's not the Lashley one. So
it got to be 6.5 minutes.
Nope.
Well, I would think the Nash one was long, right?
What's that?
I would think the one with Nash.
The longest one was 20 minutes back in 2003 for Wrestle One Japan.
Wow. Not even I'm not going to say they're not a big company, but like not even like something that
was the longest ever Bill Goldberg match.
To go into the lore. You know what? Good for Bill, because he made a career out of squashes.
Yeah. Why not? And you know what? I've always been one of these people where I don't mind squash matches when they are relevant, and Goldberg's character's always been relevant to them squashes, so it doesn't really annoy me as much. Do you know what I mean? So, don't get me wrong, sometimes when he squashed the Fiend and things like that, and it's like, okay, but you're building the character up not to take the squash. So like this match, for instance, it wasn't just a squash match, but when you look at the size of Mongo and you look at Bill, you think to yourself, well, it's not going to be a squash. So the fact that it wasn't, for me, was perfectly the way it should have been. And that's where it is with me. I don't have a problem with somebody doing a squash match. I have a problem where the squash match is not relative to the opponent.
Yeah. And
so if Andre the Giant went through his whole career squashing everyone, that wouldn't have bothered me, because the size of Andre, realistically, he could squash everyone. So that doesn't bother me. Yeah,
it's convincing.
So that's fine with me. But when it's somebody like, say if Bill Goldberg come out and speared Andre the Giant and squashed him in 2 minutes, you'd be like, that's not realistic. So that's where it just annoys me, is when it wasn't realistic. But hey ho, Goldberg gets another win on his record, keeps protected, and we know what he goes on to be.
And Mongo had the greatest crash through a table spot I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. And also, as I say, we got our second to last of the night clean victory.
Yep. Yeah.
Out of 8 matches.
That's true. So we're 2/3 of the way there, folks.
And then we've got next match. We've got Perry Saturn versus Mr. Benoit in a Ravens rule match. I loved the flock, mate. I loved it. I just absolutely loved the flock. Raven was awesome. Should have been a top carder for me. I know, don't get me wrong, I'm going to say he was the best in-ring work performer. No, but how many people do we know who's made it to the top that aren't? His promo work, his overall, the character arc, everything about this whole flock and everything was just awesome.
We talked with Sabu a few months ago, and we mentioned Raven. He said, if I was building a company, I'd have Raven be the booker.
Mm-hmm.
He's that highly regarded, and I don't think he's just saying that because it's his friend and that he's known him for 30 some odd years. Yeah. But I truly believe that the guy has a mind for the business, and it's true. Yeah. So the flock, he just took these outcasts that later you'd have guys like Saturn and Billy Kidman, and Van Hammer was nothing. Van Hammer's the luckiest guy I've ever seen. Van Hammer came in with the guitar, had some of the worst matches I've ever seen, and he stuck around for about 15 years in that company.
Van Hammer was the WCW X-Pac.
You know what, dude? I think he was Test. I think he was Test before Test.
Yeah. Well, Test was unlucky, wasn't he? Because he was looking like he was going to get the golden goose with the McMahons, and then
And then, he got Triple H'd. Look,
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I really think like Van Hammer just kind of fit in. They're just like, here, you go in here. And remember, he was on Misfits in Action too. This guy just flew by night
yeah.
into these groups. And meanwhile, he's just like, you really have no ability. I want to know. I think Regal beat the shit out of him at DDP's Christmas party, apparently, years
Yeah, I've
ago.
heard that. Yeah, yeah.
I want to know.
Interesting.
I need to know why. I need to know why. So
Yeah.
I have to ask around. I have to get some
I
sources.
think we'll get DDP at some point, so it'll be good to figure that out and speak to him.
Yeah, I hope.
Yeah.
I just have to do his yoga. I
Yeah.
will say though, Raven does say, I'm not going to wrestle on here. You're going to go through Saturn. And of course it's Raven's rules, which is kind of corny. It's a way of just like, here, you're not going to win clean.
Yeah, which is
And
good though.
Benoit was terrible on the mic here. Benoit
Benoit
opened
was
up with a
terrible on the
promo.
mic through his whole career.
He,
Benoit was terrible, but
well, would you fight him on a boat?
no.
Would you fight him on a goat?
Mm-hmm.
Would you fight him on a goat? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Benoit doesn't need to speak.
No.
Because his facial expressions and everything else was good enough, but I never thought he was a good promo ever.
No. He just looked
But
frustrated. Every time he got on the mic, he just looked, he just looked frustrated.
okay. So notes.
Mm.
Benoit looks like Dynamite Kid here. The way he snaps his suplexes, the way he turns when he does his clotheslines, everything reminds me of Dynamite Kid. Obviously, we knew Dynamite was Benoit's influence with the flying headbutts and stuff, so you can understand that. Number two, stupid. The finish was stupid. Like the whole way that no problem with the interference from Raven and the Flock. None of that stuff bothers me. The only thing that bothers me is where he hits him and knocks him out. Perry Saturn then applies a submission finisher, which the referee walks over, picks up the head, and then goes and brings for the bell. Why did he put a finisher on somebody that was unconscious? Why didn't he just pin him? Yeah.
The only defense I have to say is that Tenay put over the Rings of Saturn, and they were working the neck.
Yeah.
We said it before. He's working the neck and say, "Oh, that's strategy for Saturn." And Saturn was just incredible. Let's put it out there. Saturn was just unorthodox the way his style was. But the way that they were working the neck and Tenay was constantly putting over moves, I think that's why they had to kind of put the Rings of Saturn on. A pin would have been good. Because
I just
people
didn't
would have
think it was
forgotten.
relevant. Or if you were going to do that, why didn't he smack his back or something like that to put him down so he could lock it on? Why did they knock him out unconscious? Because if you go back and watch it, the referee walks over after he puts the Ring of Saturn on, lifts the head up, the head drops, and he goes, rings to the belt, like, and it's literally that's like 2 seconds after he put it on. So
sounds like we have some problems with referees this pay-per-view. So maybe we should probably get an enforcer, right? I'll make a call and then I'll see if he could come on later on. When we're talking about this. So, So next up, we have the delicious, don't we? We had the dumbest feud going on here about who looks better.
Oh God.
We have Buff Bagwell and Lex.
Do you know, I look at Lex Luger here and I hate his face.
It's so bad.
I just hate him. I just hate him. I don't know what it is. I never liked Lex Luger at all. I know he's a big guy in all the wrestling promoters, but there was a reason why he never become a star like Hogan and stuff, because he was just a slimy little bastard. And you could see that even here.
It's so unauthentic. And even when you look at historic pieces about him, like in just the early 90s with the Lex Express, he's even saying how they had to do 5 or 6 hours of filming at his family's house and him, just because it's so unauthentic and like not even good, like embracing. And it's like we're trying to get natural shots of you being a good guy with your family, and it's taking us 5 hours to get a fucking shot. Like, it's like, how? Like, whatever. Watching this match, I was a huge Buff Bagwell fan. I think he was just fantastic as far as, the person that he was and the persona. Thank God he got away from the American males, even though that was probably the biggest banger of an entrance theme I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
I hope that people sample it. I will call up Little Wayne and tell him to sample that.
I love when he grabbed hold of the sign as well, and like buffers the stuff and all that. I like all that stuff.
He milked it, man.
But
okay,
back with notes.
You did your homework, man. You must have been bored this weekend.
No. To be honest, I just really enjoyed this pay-per-view because it was something so different, and I just note number one. Lex Luger looks like a 2000 Linda McMahon. That was my first one.
Like Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, pretty much. 2, he looks greener than Goldberg.
Yeah. 10 years prior in the business, too.
Yeah. These two cannot carry a match between them, never mind alone. And number 3, the last one was always when you see Elizabeth run past Lex Luger to go and check on Macho Man outside the ring. If only she kept on running.
There's a hard dose of truth there. Both of them might be alive today.
Yeah, this was the start, wasn't it, of probably when she started getting involved with Luger, unfortunately, and then
yeah, and then that happened. Yeah. This is a weird pay-per-view to look at because it's just what could have been. Yeah. This was a shit match, another run-in. Like WCW, was trying to fight that battle, but I don't get it.
We've seen Scott Norton again.
Yeah, great. You got to throw him in there. That's the Vicious coming back in there, as if they didn't have enough people in that faction, right?
Yeah.
Well, X-Pac didn't come in at that point. X-Pac was on his way out.
Yeah, he's already gone at this point.
Yeah, but I don't think he started WWE yet.
No, he didn't. He didn't show up in WWE until after WrestleMania.
The day after WrestleMania, and had a great promo. What a great promo that was.
Yeah. So we move on anyway, but just like this whole pay-per-view, really, we go from bad to good to bad to good. And again, we go from the bad to the good. Dallas Page versus Kurt Hennig, United States Heavyweight Championship, back when mid-card titles meant something. Brilliant match. Match.
Nope. I'm going to fully agree with that. And surprisingly, this was Page's first major title. And it was the U.S. title. And a lot of times when they make those change of hands at a major pay-per-view for a title, they have, the company has a lot of faith in you at that point. And I do believe that the Esteem was the ball rolling for the U.S. title. And that's why he faced guys like Raven down the road and all that. But God, Kurt Hennig, and they wanted to call him perfect on here so much.
No,
the
Henningplex.
The Henningplex, or the Fisherman's Plex. What the
Fisherman suplex? Yeah,
Fisherman suplex. Pretty move, beautiful move. Just the execution, how Hennig would actually go back and just the way he arches back, just phenomenal. He's working DDP's back. And I don't know if you saw at one point, DDP is kind of towards the corner laying on his stomach, but Hennig walked across his back, just trying to injure it. And I'm like, he's literally perfection.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just simple things that make something. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't always have to be high spot. Little bits in this match, the thumb in the eye, the grab of the wrist and the turn. There's lots of little things here that can be done that make him such a big difference.
Yep. Yeah. And keep in mind, DDP started wrestling when he was 35. And he's been in the business for a while.
Do you know what? Have you seen his new podcast, The Snake Pit?
No, not yet.
So go and watch. I think it's episode 1 or 2. And he goes on about how he used to meet wrestlers when he was a nightclub owner. A manager of a nightclub. And it tells you how he gets into wrestling and how Jake helped him and stuff. And it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Okay. Where was the first time he was on TV?
Pass.
He was the limo driver for Honky Tonk Man for Rhythm and Blues. He was the car driver.
Yes, he was. Because this club that he had, all different wrestlers used to come past it all the time. Yeah. But did you know that he was a manager for about 2 or 3 years before he decided to become a wrestler.
Yeah, to Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Stud. Well, it wasn't just him, was it? It was the Diamond. He had the whole stable of them, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. The friendship lies deep with those guys, and Paige is one of the best people you could ever talk with. And here, I will say, if you were starting an academy, oddly enough, if you were starting a wrestling academy, I would tell students, watch this match, because you could tell how tired they both were, and they were giving it all. Then all of a sudden, then they put over the diamond cutter, and it can't. They, as much as they want to advertise it, nobody can understand the feel of when you see the diamond cutter get hit and the crowd erupt. I love the fact that those WCW crowds were actually, volumes were elevated, but when that diamond cutter hit, you knew it, and Paige knew it,
and it come from nowhere as well, which was awesome.
Yep. Yeah,
it wasn't like the
flow through. Yeah, it was a flow.
It was a flow through. And the thing is, sometimes the crowds aren't ready for it, but they don't need to be ready for it, because like the fact that it come from nowhere. It's why Randy Orton's moves, the RKO, so over. And the two pretty similar moves, aren't they? I think it's just Randy jumps a little bit when he does this, where Diamond used to just fall. But awesome finish.
Yeah, and Cody just goes backwards into unemployment with his now.
Yeah.
But Diamond Dallas Page, man, becomes the United States champion, and what a great match. Like this might be he might be my epic today.
Yeah,
because he was just that good.
Yeah, as I say, this whole pay-per-view was like this. I mean, apart from the last two matches, which were, but if you look, you've got Guerrero, Malenko, then we hit Norton and Vincent and that. Then we pop up again with the Saturn, because as much as the screwy finish, the actual match between Saturn and Benoit was really good. So we come up again. Then we pop back down again for the stupid Bagwell versus Lex Luger match, and then we come up again for the perfect. So it up until that point, it has been a bit of an up and down flow time thing, which is not great, but it is what it is. But yeah, let's move on to our next one.
Yeah, but we have the next one, right? But let me tell you something. This told a story, and that's why sometimes you have matches to tell stories. Which does make the case. I never heard the announcers. The announcers are upset because if Eric Bischoff wins against Larry Zbyszko, and you have the referee of a certain Canadian guy, Bret Hart, he's the referee in this. This is also, in my opinion, the demise of WCW, because they just pulled the biggest free agent ever, and he's a referee in the top level match. Anyway, so if Eric Bischoff wins, WCW is owned by NWO, and if Zbyszko wins, vice versa. NWO is not ceased to exist, but there has to be coexist. Can they coexist, Andy? Can they coexist? Yep.
Nice. The notes are back again.
Yep.
What a stupid match. Larry Zbyszko reminds me of Bob Barker here for some reason. Don't know why, but he just did. So nice. I wrote it down. Somebody in WCW is getting sued after they put the lead into the sock of Bischoff. As Bischoff kicks out, you see it fly across the ring and into the crowd. You can actually physically see Bischoff looking over and looking to see, and Bret Hart's checking it out quite well as well to see if anybody's being hurt in the crowd.
It was legit. It was scary. It was a metal slug that Scott Hall put in the boot. What did they call that? The foot piece for
the mitt.
Yeah,
mitt.
It flies out. Bret is worried at that point because it's a metal slug that could actually kill somebody. Depending on where you hit him. Zbyszko works great.
Yeah,
like watching Zbyszko work was excellent, and Bischoff's hamming it up. But Zbyszko was in great shape, and people, the older I get, the more I appreciate Zbyszko, because of how he worked. And it was a famous feud between him and Bruno. The teacher and student fighting each other. Zbyszko was just a legend, and here he tried to put over Bischoff as much as he could, or as much as anybody could at this point. But Bret Hart knew that there was a cheat there and claimed Zbyszko to be the winner, even though a bell never rang. So we'll still never figure it out.
Yeah.
But what a waste. I mean, it told a story, but you could have used so many different people in so many different ways here.
Yeah. Well, I say another screwy finish, another load of crap. And then we move on to our main event, Sting versus Hollywood Hulk Hogan for the championship. Really long-term storytelling on this one. Happy as that.
Yeah, it worked out. It worked out very well. They actually had the vignettes too, and that actually worked out. It's not really telling you the whole story. It was just more Tenay and Shivani telling you about how 96, right? It was weird because it's like, well, why don't you just show us a package and show the crowd?
Yeah.
Instead, you got what's behind me.
I've got some notes here. One was the packages could have been better. Two, how on earth did WCW not get sued by the Crow films? How did it not happen? I can't believe it never happened. Number three, feel sorry for Sting. Long-term story like this, and the payout at the end is crap. Number four, in WCW, you must have to apply for a referee's license, because if you are a special guest referee, that means that it can continue into every match that's on the card, which is obviously why this just got standard for when Bret come in and interfered toward the end. And the final one was, I was a bit concerned at the end that the ring was going to collapse because of so many people that come into it.
Yeah, it was the commencement of WCW taking ownership once spoiler alert, guys, Sting wins. But once Sting wins, during the match, it was just slow paced, and it's like Sting didn't work for a while, and they're saying, "Oh, he looks great physically. He did look great. His arms were as big as could be." Hogan, I'm gonna admit, this is my favorite version of Hogan.
Yeah.
Like everything
they said, he looked like he was having fun.
Yeah, because he was.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why we talked about The Rock and Hogan facing each other, and he's telling people, go slow, milk it, dude, because this is how it is. And Rock will even say the same thing. He's like, I took instruction from him, and we made one of the best memories ever. But I'll tell you, man, just watching that match, it's like, okay, you have Bret Hart in there, and you have a guy that does a sharpshooter better than the Scorpion Deathlock put on by Sting. Okay, you mean to tell me that you cannot insert him in a storyline where we could show his work? Because the match prior, he put on the sharpshooter on Scott Hall, didn't mean anything. Another burial of Scott Hall, subliminally, if you ask me. Kevin Nash is nowhere on the card.
I think
you couldn't have Kevin Nash against Bret Hart.
Kevin Nash was injured,
but they were teasing if he was there. Did you hear Tenay? Tenay's like, we don't know the whereabouts.
Yeah, but he was definitely injured. They were just using that as a bit of the story.
Just say it though.
But that was the whole thing, is well, that was whole Bishop's mantra, wasn't it? Was anything can happen, even if people are, smart markers, like they know he's injured. Yes, but could he turn up? Could he not? And that's what that's just them, isn't it? You know what I mean? That was just them in their way.
Yeah, but then you have guys like J.J. Dillon coming out and saying, we picked the referees in a hat, and Nick Patrick's going to be the referee, even though he was an ECW. I wish he was a WCW/NWO ref. It just randomly picked him. So that's why we need the enforcer. A really bad botch finish. Hogan literally pinned Sting and never kicked out. And the crowd was so flat, like, I guess that happened. And then they restarted the match because the bell wasn't supposed to be rung because Bret Hart's on the side. Like, just real bad production value on that standpoint, because you're just like, we didn't even know Bret Hart was there. Like, what is this, like a movie? Like, it's just like, he just suddenly appears. It's like, do you remember in Lord of the Rings where Golem automatically just popped up out of nowhere when they're going up to Mordor? Like, that was good, but we're not watching a movie. We're watching, somebody win a belt.
Yeah, no, I get you. I was the same. I was kind of like, that's why I've put him, as I said, I put my notes there, Paul Sting, because I just feel like Sting kind of, after all this time, and he was getting his moment, and I don't think it was the moment that it should have been or could have been.
Look, we got the moment where we needed to see, though. We needed to see the Giant and Silver King and El Dandy come into the ring and celebrate.
But the thing is, as well, that's one thing that I noticed as well is when they were doing this whole thing, I felt like you just seen Sting get swallowed into the crowd, and
Yeah.
you couldn't get them. You know, one thing with WWE, even at this time, they could take an iconic photo or an image and put it out there, and it'd last for there's still images now, like the Hogan Rock image, when the two of them are facing off, and there's loads of iconic images of them when the people have first done whatever they won the title or whatever it may be. And there, with this one, I just felt like it was just an absolute clusterfuck.
It
Sting's the best way to
was.
put it.
Do you remember Sting going on the top rope and holding a belt? The first thing you see is him and Giant like hanging out in there. They do that a lot, though. Remember when Luger won the belt like
Yeah.
a few months prior? And
Yeah.
just everybody surrounds the ring, and like all you remember is just everybody else, which I guess is the mantra of, and this is the problem now, the mantra of everybody is equal, we're all one team kind of deal. And
Yeah.
that shouldn't be the case. You have a
Yeah.
champion, a lone bound champion. Let him celebrate alone.
Yeah. That's it, isn't it? Well, that was Starcade 1997. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Dale, what are we going to give it out of 5, mate?
Man, out of 5, I'd probably give it a 2.5 stars.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's about a 50 because, as we said, we had some good, bad, and I'd say I'm going to give it 2 actually, because I feel like it was good, bad, but it's going to lose a 0.5 off me to make it to 2 out of 5 because of the screwy finishes left, right, and centre. But guys, there is some good matches on there, and as we said, like some Malenko versus Eddie, Page versus Perfect or Henning.
Yeah,
make sure you go and check them out. And there's obviously the psychology of the whole Raven Flock stuff with Benoit and Saturn. So there's good stuff on there. So don't let the 2.2 out of 5 put you off.
And you know what? To top that off too, it's as much as we talked badly about Goldberg and over his career, kind of, the Mongo match is kind of fun.
Yeah,
because you'll see how Mongo was. And like I said, the crowd loved him because they knew he was kind of bad. But when he faced other athletes, this guy turned into a pro, like an amazing wrestler. He was out to teach people. But overall, guys, we appreciate it. It was nice going into a WCW event for a while. So we are going to look and venture into other areas next time, but March is a busy month for a lot of the main.
I say, guys, we are going to start doing some more WCW, ECW stuff as well. It's hard because at the moment, like the Royal Rumble was always going to be the Royal Rumble in January. December, there wasn't a lot to pick from, so we really didn't go into a few details. And obviously, we had a couple of weeks off because obviously I caught COVID and whatnot.
The coof.
Yeah. But going forward, we will make sure that we do give some other bits and bobs of other ones, because I've really enjoyed this one. I know we used it there too, Dale, do you know what I mean? And we did a 10-1 Starcade and it was absolute drizzle and shit, so we didn't do it. But we will make sure that we get some in. So if if there's anything that you want to see us review as well, guys, make sure you put it in the comment section. And thing, as I say, the people that are still with us now, thank you so much. We are seeing our viewerships and listenerships pop up and up, which is really, really good. We're not here for quantity, we're here for quality. So the guys that are listening all the way through, we appreciate every single one of you. So thank you very much for that. But from me and Dale, until next time, take it easy and stay well.
Enjoy, and we coming for you, sucker.